All right, let's shift focus and talk about what has been happening the last few weeks also. The KRA. The KRA is on the radar of the county bosses. You saw what happened last week with Sonko being questioned. This week they're supposed to move into other county bosses, and they're looking for tax in arrears, tax that was withheld by the counties and all that. And it's a very serious thing because it threatens the institution of the counties, especially counties that don't have substantive office holder like Nairobi County, where the speaker is not there substantive, and we don't even have a deputy speaker. But I want to understand from you gentlemen, where is KRA headed with this? Because in my mind, I'm looking at a KRA that has been complacent. There's a lot they should have done, but they have not done it. Why now? And where are they headed with this? Let me begin with Otiende Amollo again on this.
Well, I think we've said it was 2 weeks ago when we discussed the KRA probes. And I think we were more or less agreed that it was a step in the right direction, because it was an effort at reducing impunity. It is still my view that, first, there are enough people who ought to pay tax who have not been paying tax. And the fact that they are not paying tax, it means it's been in collusion with some people within the KRA. And inevitably, it means, therefore, that as you go for those people out there, you must get their collaborators within. Secondly, in terms of the inquiries for the counties that ought to pay tax and all, I think, again, it is a step in the right direction, because payment of tax is a primary obligation, and especially when you withhold tax. When you state on paper that you've retained a certain amount of money to be submitted as tax, then that should be submitted without any question whatsoever. So for me, I think it is a step in the right direction. Okay.
What of the argument that this is coming, the timing is perhaps suspect, when there's been a lot of push and pull between the Senate and the National Assembly, and the President talking about the amount that is available, and then you moving to counties to ask for money that they've been withholding because they're asking for more money? Do you think that's an argument that suffices?
I think no one can say that there is a wrong time to enforce the law. If the law requires that you pay tax at any time, it can be enforced.
But the fact that there have been arrears...
Secondly, the question of monies that ought to go to the counties has nothing to do with the historical monies that should have been remitted. Because they are focusing in historical monies that should have been remitted. I think the question, though, would be, and this is where we should be looking, for counties like Nairobi, where the governor has chosen not to give the residents the benefit of a deputy. If it was to come a time when he's charged, and if his word, as he promised, when Waitito was charged, he was the first to say that if he's charged, he'll be happy to step out of the office. So the question then would be, if that was to happen, then what happens?
What next?
So that is some of the areas where we sometimes need decency in governance. When the law gives you the opportunity to have a deputy, you ought to give the people the benefit of that deputy, because it's not for you, it is for the county. And its residents.
Jacoy.
Well, Otiende has said it all. I do not think the money being sought belongs to the counties. I think the counties are just but a collection unit of payee and those other taxes. Remember, the monies which were before collected by local authorities, the rule remains the same. They're supposed to be remitted to National Treasury, and then the counties take back as part of the 15%. But these counties, they are not collecting this money. If you take, for example, Sierra County, the monies that come from the landing beaches, the figure nearly 400 million because of maybe inaction, collection, or it's going to people's pocket. So I think KRA is doing the right thing. KRA must be the primary and probably the only person who is collecting our monies. And they need our support, because in this country there are simply too many people who are not paying taxes. But I wanted to say one thing. I oppose KRA being a political tool, being used as a political tool. KRA are not police officers. KRA must go out of its way to make tax payment enjoyable and agreeable to Kenyans. Because look at what what is happening to that company called Keroche. If you close it down, how many people do you affect in that chain? I said here that everybody knows Humphrey Karaoke. He's been here in all the bad things for over the years. But what stops Kenya Revenue Authority from putting a desk at his factory to recover and keeping the jobs? Like this nonsense happening in Keroche. How does arresting Tabitha and the ailing husband pay the government? Why can't they employ some of us jobless people to go and sit there and collect for you and you pay us?
Correct.
They are even create agencies to do it. This is 21st century, Ken. Primitivity will not get us to the next, and we will not ride it by taking people to court. I really agreed with the judiciary the other day when they spoke to this BBI team and said, in the laws you want to change, this war against corruption, make it political. Stop crowding court corridors with cases which don't make sense. You know, but I still insist that Kenya Revenue Authority can have better places. Take, for example, Kisumu today. They are moving Kenya Revenue offices to Kakamega Road. In other words, if you have an issue with KRA in Kisumu now, you have to go to Mamboleo. And CBD is 5 kilometers away. What is somebody doing? Why do you do things without a thought? Even KRA people have spoken to one of them, saying they spoke to the government, don't move us from CBD, because here we are accessed by people who are walking. To move from city center to Mamboleo on a tuk-tuk or a piki-piki, it is 200 shillings. For a small business business person who's a taxpayer, what is the make tax comfortable for the people you are going after? Let people not run away from care officials like we are running away from policemen.
Okay. Aaron, do you have an answer to why now?
I wouldn't know why now, but there's something that Otiende said, which I agree with, that we all agreed it is a step in the right direction. But is it the best step? If you ask me, and there has been this proposal, though it has been shot down, there are countries in this world that have privatized revenue collection out of the thinking that is generally believed, and there is good reason to believe that it is true, that private entities functions better than parastatal and government agencies, where you have people set up a deposit of course it's a proper significant amount of, say, what you'd collect in a year, and compete, give assurances that this is the amount. And believe you me, if we would privatize KRA, we would be collecting almost double, if not triple, of what we are currently collecting, because KRA as an institution still has got a lot of cases of political interference, and that is a sad truth. What Jacoy has mentioned is just one. You need to read a book, by the way, and I find a lot of parallels between what is happening in Kenya right now and what happened in South Africa. There's a book called The President's Keepers, the men keeping Jacob Zuma in power and out of prison. What happened to SASRA, the South African equivalent of Kenya Revenue Association, is almost similar to this, where, and currently we are seeing of late, EACC and KRA being used as tools to fight political wars. Is there a good justification to, or good reason to establish? Of course there is, because as somebody observed the other day, Ken, that most of the governors that are being charged are those that are publicly known to be of a certain political affiliation. Those of a different political affiliation, say those who support the handshake, despite the fact that there have been previous public pronouncements by EACC on their matters, they have never come up more than 1 or 2 years down the line. Some have even publicly said it, that don't worry, I will be around so long as the handshake still is in existence. And therefore, when you find institutions that Kenyans expect to be of the highest level of professionalism, as EACC and KRA falling victims to political machinations, then you're worried for us as a country. I think it is time for us to have a proper discussion. How do we just live together as Kenya? You know, and even that is the point that we have said in all this this issue that is going on about whether to have a referendum or not. There are issues. There's just good justification as to certain things that we do not agree about, and we can agree to set them aside. But at least there's good justification for certain things. For example, every Kenyan, I do not know any Kenyan who wants to roll back on the gains of devolution. Leave alone the issues of money being pilfered and all those discussions about how money keeps on getting lost in our counties. At least everybody agrees that we must strengthen devolution because it has reduced the feeling of exclusion amongst our people. Many of the citizens at least now can enjoy government services thanks to devolution. We must ensure that we give it. If you listen to the explanation that has been given by some of the governors, there's good sense in what they're saying. A governor says, for example, when they appear before CPAC, that the reason I have backlog in KRA, NSSF, and NHIF, all these statutory deductions, is that at the particular time, you know, for NSSF, you need to pay by 20th, for NHIF, you need to pay by 9th, and I think the same for KRA. If, for example, in a month where we have a stalemate like we've had in the month of July, August, September is coming to an end, counties haven't received funding. Where do you expect governors to get the money? Okay. Yet, when the time comes, the system for KRA, NHIF, and NSSF is set such that counties will be asked to pay the default, not it's called what? The fine, you know, for late remittance. Therefore, when governors raise some of these issues, we should be able to listen to them and not just castigate and say, oh, you guys are not remitting.
Okay, Bonnie.
This is a clear-cut case of giving a dog a bad name so as to have an opportunity to kill it. When you splash on headlines that Governor Sonko owes KRA billions of shillings, the public perceives that to mean that Sonko has stolen that money. When the real issue is that Sonko was expecting to be paid money by the government so as to settle those arrears the government has not been paying him. So this is a case whereby somebody wants to intimidate leaders so that those leaders don't pursue whatever it is that they feel they deserve, or the institution they speak for, the institution they represent, deserve. This happening at a time when governors have been very strong. We saw them recently on the streets picketing for a higher share, a bigger share of the shareable revenue. It could be that somebody wants to create a narrative that these people, even as they demand to be given more money, the money that we have given them, they have been misusing. It is an age-old tradition in this country that once a politician becomes a fierce critic of the government, tax issues start coming up. I think on this show, in future or very soon, to bring an expert from KRA to explain why they would allow that accumulation to become not just millions, but even billions, before then they go and demand for it. Could it be what Amollo has said at the beginning, that there is a possibility of connivance? People are agreeing forth. These matters are very serious. The fact that Kerosha, for example, is one of the few local industries that is competing with multinationals, and that somebody can just wake up and want to intimidate them, it is something for which all the representatives of the people, especially from the Kerosha area of Naivasha and Nakuru County in general, should come up in our defense. Because then, what are you saying? That it is a crime for an indigenous Kenyan to succeed, and it is acceptable for Asians, for that matter, to succeed? It is something you cannot support. Finally, we want somebody to explain the KRA DPP nexus. Why is it is the office of the DPP which is so brisk on matters of tax collection and tax evasion. I understand that from the principles of collection and payment of taxes, there is a way in which you can demand for tax arrears. You don't rush to the DPP, and the DPP is there glad, ready and willing, and he orders for the arrest of people. That is not the way. There is a provision even for the person who has got an arrears to be invited, and they agree how the money is going to be paid.
Okay. Okay. Senator?
Yes, you know, Ken, the mention of all those examples probably brings to mind a few questions. First, remember when taxation was invented in the medieval times, a long time ago, it was seen as a form of equalization, taking from the rich to balance and give to the poor, and of course balance how you give services. And the question that one would be asking themselves, even then, as we look forward into how do we reform our current state, is that why we are here? Is that what we are doing with our current approach to taxation? And I would be saying quickly two things. First, I believe, and let me first affirm precisely what all my colleagues have said. It's important that we let Kenyans know paying taxes is obligatory. There is no argument we can make here to give the impression that there is any reason or any good reason why we should avoid paying taxes. Taxes must be paid. But then the question behooves what amount of taxes, and as I say that, it is important also to tell Kenyans, that Kenya is the 84th highest taxed country in the world, 21st, number 21 in Africa, and so you'd be asking yourself, what form of taxes, what type of taxes are we saying we should be paying? Let me give just two examples. First, and this is why I believe that the balance should be found. You brought in the issue of the governance, for example, and what is their motive? When statutory deductions are made, for example, to people, to workers at the county government level, those monies are supposed to be definitely then forwarded to the organs, for example, KRA and others. But you replayed that scenario very, very well, and you're asking, now that the counties don't have the money, so why demand then? And that would bring me to my second point, which is largely what my colleagues have been addressing. Again, there's an example, and if you read a book called Shoe Dog, and it tells the story by Frank Knight on the inventor and the owner of the business called Nike. Now, the athletics and sports big name globally. And he tells a major story of how, when he was about to conquer the business world of sportswear, then some competitors, of course in some of those big names, decided that they have to bring him down. And you know what they did? They went and sought to exploit a law within Congress. And the guy had to personally go and lobby Congress, because the levy that he was supposed to pay as part of that law was way beyond what that company had ever earned in the earnings, and they would never pay. In fact, if they had followed that law, they would have collapsed, and today you would never see or know Nike the way you know it. And it's out of that lobbying that today you know the brand the way it is. What am I saying? If you then look at some of those cases, for example, about Keroche, about people like Humphrey Kariuki, and this is where the balancing act must be. I would say this as a businessman. Government needs to understand the world of business. And when you are applying those tax laws and enforcing them, you also must employ a measure of people who understand the business world. And I think Jacob is the one who posed that question. For example, Ken, ask yourself, if you go and raid a ranch in Laikipia because somebody owes taxes, and this ranch is being done and carried out by a Kenyan, and then people from DCI, from EACC, they go and herd cattle from the ranch. Are they going to milk those cows and raise taxes? You know, are they going to slaughter them and sell meat? And when you go and dismember a distillery in Thika, where so many people are employed, because you want to force Humphrey Karaoke to pay those taxes, are you going to set up another brewery somewhere and raise those taxes? And what I'm saying is this, that we must have a serious thought towards that approach. And I've been asking this question loudly, and I believe I'll get a platform to ask it even more louder very soon. Ask yourself, why is Dubai such a big success? Dubai thrives on tax-free regimes, mostly. Tax-free that, taxes-free, duty-free this, duty-free that. And they have made, I mean, why do governments as big as the United States economy at times sit and contemplate tax cuts? Okay. And you hear in this budget, we are proposing this tax cut and that tax cut. And I would want to caution those that are in charge of policy in government. You know, once we let the focus be only on raising revenue for government through taxation and increasing taxation to Kenyans, you get it wrong. Because you disable the people, you slow down the economy. I mean, the focus should be much more on creating a highly mobile economy that raises more money, including when you collect less from people, you collect more in volume. And I believe that should be what we would be looking at globally. Let me just say that I think we need to rethink how we approach that taxation issue, but I am not for this idea of going to cripple business, parading business people as though they are thugs, people who are employing thousands and thousands of people. I mean, give them an opportunity and a medium, as my colleagues here suggest, of collecting that tax.
To pay back.
Yeah,
all right.
We've
completely run out of time, but I want to give you an opportunity. Boni Halwale, starting with you, we'll end with Otiende Amollo now. Just your closing remarks in 30 seconds, because we have to end this. If you have something, if you don't, I'll skip to Aaron.
I want to send my condolences to the people of Zimbabwe following the death of former President Mugabe. Mugabe made a few mistakes later on in his life, and many young people might not realize that this is one of the greatest brains that the continent of Africa has ever had. He was such a courageous leader. Wide rule was so entrenched in the then Rhodesia, but with him and Joshua Ngomo, during our time, because it was happening when we were in high school and early university days, they managed to break wide rule. Okay. May he rest in eternal peace.
All right.
Aaron, I'd wish to say that the handshake is not a substitute to our constitution. At all times, we should seek to respect the Constitution of Kenya. It shouldn't be the order of business that for you to live happily in the Republic of Kenya, you must support the handshake, and those that are considered not to support it must be persecuted and chased like rats in the dead of the night. It's not fair. It's not the kind of country that we aspire to live in, and we must condemn it by all means.
Okay. And I've seen some people asking me to ask you, do you still stand by the language that you used when you were addressing the Mao issue, you and Mheshimiwa Kwech?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong I said, unless he finds anything wrong.
The language.
Yes. What did I say?
Because you even said we should excuse you for your language.
Yeah, I said because of the arrogance of the minister. You know, when a minister says that a title deed is a piece of paper, it gets you worked up. Okay. When he closes down 15 schools and he says, I do not care, that is not the language that is expected of a cabinet minister. That's why I said, excuse my language, but I am totally disappointed with this guy.
Okay. All right. Zakoyo.
Just to go back to where Matangi left, I'm being informed in all these establishments, including Keroche, KRA has a desk. So it beats logic why you charge the investor and leave your KRA officials. And to the question which led us there about county of Sonko, county of Homa Bay and all that, what is so wrong with KRA having an office in the governor's office? An officer to collect, so that we can make our systems neat. I think the system is too large, and somebody must then explain to Kenyans the nexus between the DPP and KRA, because there's something is not right.
Okay. And finally, Mheshimiwa.
I want to urge Dr. Halwale and Senator Cheruiyot to stop seeing the shadow of the handshake in everything. From Ndindi Nyoro to KRA to everything. Please, let's address some matters independently. Secondly, now that we've disappointed those of you who wanted violent and chaotic nominations in Kibra, and we successfully conducted those nominations to meet your selected footballers, we are looking forward to peaceful and fruitful elections, and we will retain that seat. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds, Senator. Yes, you have 30 seconds. We have to leave this.
Thank you, Ken. I would want to apply my mind to this debate that has been going on right now in the National Assembly on the capping of interest rates. And that came up, I see it's even in the paper here, that members of parliament have opposed it. And, we have to say clearly that the banks cannot hide behind the fact that they can argue from the logic of Adam Smith and all those economic theorists that we know. But it is the practice of what they have done on ground that they failed to seize the opportunity when they had it to themselves to inculcate and grow a good culture of responsibility amongst themselves, so that they can give loans at fair rates. Control. Now, once they abused that opportunity, the law had to step in. Somebody had to do something, no matter how wrong or lopsided or the effects of it. But who will trust them again if you give them the freedom they want? They can control and regulate themselves, while they did not in the first place. That is where the story rests.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming for AM Live and sharing your perspective in this very, very touchy topics with me this morning. And thank you for coming. Hope to see you again.